They were too tired to come to my graduation. That's what they told me. Too exhausted from work, too drained from the week, too worn out to make the 3-hour drive to Virginia. But they weren't too tired for champagne. They weren't too tired for spa robes and rose-petal foot baths. They weren't too tired to post about it on Instagram while I stood alone the night before my valedictorian speech, staring at 3 empty seats with my family's name on them. My mother's comment under my sister's photo read, "Best day with my beautiful girl." Not a single word about me, not one mention of tomorrow, just spa steam, matching slippers, and curated joy. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about being tired. This was about who they chose to show up for, and it was never going to be me. So I rewrote my speech, and I made sure they heard every single word. It wasn't just the graduation. It was everything that came before it, every missed moment, every shrugged shoulder, every time I was told I was different, serious, not the kind of daughter who needed celebration. I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, in a house where Sunday dinners mattered and appearances mattered more. My parents ran a successful real estate business. My father handled commercial properties. My mother specialized in luxury listings. And my sister Savannah? She specialized in being seen. When I turned 16, I asked for one thing. Dinner at the Italian restaurant downtown. Nothing extravagant. Just the 4 of us, pasta, and maybe tiramisu. My mother said they were too busy. A lot happening at the office, sweetheart. We'll celebrate at home. So we did. I got a leather-bound planner wrapped in silver paper and a note that read, "For the future you're building." It was thoughtful in a practical way. I smiled for the photo. I said thank you. I helped clean up the dishes, and I told myself it was enough. 3 months later, Savannah turned 19. Suddenly, our backyard was transformed. String lights hung from the trees like something out of a southern wedding. A private chef arrived with silver trays. There was a custom cake shaped like a Chanel purse, a full karaoke setup, and a guest list that included half of her Instagram followers. I stood at the sliding glass door watching her twirl in the dress my mother had picked out special. My father held the camera like he was documenting the Oscars. My mother clapped and shouted, "Look at our little star!" They never called me that, not once. When I asked about it later, gently, cautiously, my mother tilted her head and smiled. "Oh, honey, you've never liked parties. You're our serious one, our focused one." As if that explained everything, as if that excused never asking what I actually wanted. And maybe they were right. I wasn't the daughter who sparkled at brunch spots or posted selfies with motivational quotes. I liked quiet bookstores and black coffee. I read before bed instead of scrolling through fashion blogs. But that didn't mean I didn't want to be seen. So I worked harder. Straight A's, extra credit, office hours with professors. If I couldn't be the daughter they clapped for, maybe I could be the one they quoted at dinner parties. But they never did. And when I finally earned valedictorian, top of my class at the University of Virginia, my mother's response was distracted at best. "That's nice, sweetie. So that means what? Highest grades?" Then she pivoted immediately. "Did I tell you Savannah's stylist might be doing a shoot in Miami?" I let her finish. I didn't interrupt. I just listened and felt that familiar ache settle back into my chest. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. I'd practiced my speech 3 times, ironed my gown, laid out my shoes. Everything was ready except me. At 2:03 in the morning, I gave up and reached for my phone. Maybe a congratulations text from a classmate. Maybe something encouraging from Jessie. What I got instead was my sister's Instagram story. There she was, lying back in a white spa chair, cucumber slices over her eyes, a champagne flute in her hand. My mother sat beside her, grinning beneath a gold hydrating face mask. Their robes read, "The Willow Spa, Georgetown, VIP Suite." I tapped to the next clip, a boomerang of them clinking glasses. The caption floated above them in looping script. "Self-care before summer chaos." Another tap. A photo this time, Savannah with her head on my mother's shoulder, both of them glowing under soft lighting. My mother had commented underneath, "Best day with my star girl." Not so proud of Elena. Not wish we could be there tomorrow. Not even a mention that I existed. Just spa steam and matching smiles. I sat frozen in the dark, my phone glowing in my hand like evidence. I hadn't said anything when they bailed. I hadn't said anything when they shrugged off my hand-calligraphed invitations. But this cracked something loose inside me. I opened our family group chat. Saw your stories. Thought Mom and Dad were too tired to travel. Savannah replied 10 minutes later. Don't be sensitive. This was planned weeks ago. You'll be fine. 3 sentences. That was the sum total of their explanation. I turned my phone face down, then face up, then back down again. My eyes landed on the folder beside my laptop, the speech I'd spent weeks perfecting. The one filled with safe gratitude and careful language designed not to offend. I opened the document and stared at the title. A thank you to those who believed. I deleted it. Then I opened a blank page and started over. I wasn't writing out of anger. I wasn't writing out of spite. I was writing because the version I had before didn't fit anymore. It was polished like a Christmas card addressed to people who'd never read it. This time, I wasn't writing for them. I was writing for the girl who celebrated every small win alone, for the student who skipped spring break to meet deadlines, for the young woman who stopped asking for attention and started building without it. By sunrise, I had a new speech, and I printed it on plain paper, folded it once, and tucked it into my folder. Jessie showed up at 7:15 that morning with 2 coffees and a wrinkled paper bag. "Muffin emergency," she said, handing me the one without blueberries. She remembered I hated them. Tom pulled up minutes later with a bouquet of sunflowers poking out the passenger window. He didn't say much, just grinned and nodded. He didn't need words to say he was proud. We arrived at the ceremony venue early. The sun was already sharp and unforgiving. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the lawn in perfect lines, and there, near the front, 3 seats marked with a small handwritten sign. Reserved, Carter family. Still untouched. Still empty. I didn't look too long, just long enough to know. People started arriving in waves, fathers in pressed shirts, mothers holding cameras, siblings waving wildly from the aisles. There was a kind of soft chaos in the air, excited and expectant. Jessie squeezed my hand once before heading to her seat. A volunteer guided me behind the stage. I clutched my folder tighter, feeling the corners dig into my palm. The dean smiled at me, her microphone already clipped on. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded. Not the kind you give out of politeness, the kind you give when there's nothing left to lose. When they called my name, the applause began, but I didn't hear it. Not really, because I was already focused on the microphone, on the live stream camera mounted at the back, on the words I was about to say, words they never expected, words they would never forget. I adjusted the microphone with steady hands. I looked out at the crowd, then I looked directly at those 3 empty chairs, and I began. To those who worked hard to be seen, this is for you. My voice sounded calm, firmer than I expected. It carried across the field, through the camera feed, into living rooms and phones, wherever someone might be listening. To the professors who stayed after hours, who reminded us that questions weren't weakness. To the friends who knew when to knock and when to just sit quietly beside us. Thank you. Soft smiles rippled through the crowd. Real connection. I didn't pause long. And to those who believed in showing up, even when it was inconvenient, or uncomfortable, or unfashionable. I let that word land. Some of us didn't have confetti waiting at home. Some of us weren't born into applause. The crowd shifted. Subtle, but unmistakable. People knew what I was saying, even if I never said names. Graduation is about achievement, but it's also about being witnessed, because there is a difference between making it and being seen making it. I could feel the camera holding on my face. Good. I requested 3 seats in the family section. They're still available. Silence. Someone coughed near the aisle, and it echoed louder than it should have. If you've ever sat in a room and wondered whether your success counted because no one clapped, let me be the first to say it does. It always has. Jessie's eyes brimmed with tears. Tom gave a low whistle through a proud smile. Some of us grew up learning that love had conditions, that pride had terms. but you don't have to wait for someone else's permission to feel proud. Another pause, longer this time. So if today you walked across this stage for yourself because no one else pushed you, no one else praised you, then I see you. We made it, and we made it honestly. I folded the paper and stepped back from the microphone. Applause broke slowly, then surged, louder than I expected, but I wasn't listening for that. Because somewhere behind a screen, they were hearing it too, and this time they didn't get to interrupt. They didn't get to smile and spin it. They just had to sit with it and let it land. I didn't go to the after party. I didn't take photos with the dean or linger by the champagne table they'd set up under the tent. I walked straight back to my dorm, still in my gown, and sat down at my desk in the dim light. I opened the bottom drawer and reached behind the stack of old pens and crumpled receipts. The envelope was still there, slightly bent at the corner. No return address. Just my name, Elena, written in my father's handwriting. The way he looped the E had never changed. He'd given it to me 3 years ago after we got pancakes to celebrate my university acceptance. He slid it across the table like it was no big deal. "Just something I wanted you to have," he'd said. I'd read it once, folded it neatly, and tucked it away. Tonight, it felt different. I unfolded the paper carefully as if the words might slip off the page. "Elena, you always carry more than you let on. I see it. I hope you never forget that your quiet strength is still strength. You've earned everything coming to you. No matter where you go, don't let anyone make you small to feel seen. You already are. Love, Dad." That was it. No long speech, no instructions. Just a note from a father who, at some point, had seen me. Really seen me. Before the dinners I wasn't invited to. Before Savannah's spa weekends became family traditions. Before I started shrinking myself just to keep the peace. I held the letter like something fragile, like it might turn to dust if I breathed too hard. It had never been read aloud at Sunday dinner, never been framed in the hallway. No one had ever asked to see it again. But it existed, and I had kept it. My phone buzzed on the desk, a text from my mother. "We watched the stream. Your speech was, well, unexpected, but powerful. Call us when you get a moment, okay?" And another from Savannah. "Congrats, valedictorian. I didn't know you were feeling all that. Don't be so dramatic next time." I didn't reply. I didn't open Instagram the next morning when Savannah posted another photo of herself in a robe, this time with the caption, "True peace is choosing who deserves your energy." My mother had commented underneath, "You are our sunshine." I didn't like it, didn't share it, didn't respond, because I had something they never posted, never remembered, never valued enough to hold on to. But I did. And sometimes the things they don't frame are the ones you carry with you the longest. I folded the letter back into its creases, slipped it into my wallet, and kept packing. Because in 3 weeks I was moving to Washington, D.C., and I wasn't asking for permission. 3 weeks later, I moved to D.C. The internship offer had come in a month before graduation. Copywriting for a digital magazine focused on women-led ventures. I said yes without hesitation. It felt like a clean slate, a chance to build something that didn't need my parents' approval or my sister's validation. My apartment was in a quiet neighborhood near DuPont Circle. Tiny, creaky wooden floors. A window that caught exactly 15 minutes of morning sun if I woke up early enough. But it was mine. No framed motivational quotes on the walls. No family portraits staged on mantels. Just quiet, open space to figure out what I wanted to write and who I was when no one was grading me. I didn't call my parents, not out of spite, but because I didn't feel the pull anymore. That thread between us had loosened, frayed at the edges, and I didn't have the energy to tie it back together. Savannah texted once the night before I left. Just one message. I kept thinking about that speech. You were brave. I stared at it for a long time. There was no apology. No, I should have come. But it also wasn't laced with sarcasm or condescension. Just honest, uneasy, maybe even curious. 2 weeks into my new job, she messaged again. "Want to grab lunch? I'll be in the city next week." We met at Union Market on a Saturday afternoon. Neutral territory. We didn't talk about our mother or our father. We didn't mention the spa day or the empty chairs. Instead, we talked about the food, about how strange it felt to suddenly be adults comparing rent prices and metro commutes. She told me about a brand deal that fell through. I told her about a pitch my editor had loved. It was the first time in years we'd shared a meal without our parents' opinions hovering over us like a cloud. When we said goodbye outside the market, she didn't hug me, but she looked like she wanted to, and maybe that was enough for now. That night, I walked home past a small flower stand near my building. I stopped and bought a bouquet. Nothing fancy. Yellow tulips and baby's breath, just something bright for my desk. When I got back to my apartment, I set up the self-timer on my phone and took a photo. Me, sitting at my little kitchen table, smiling, the flowers in my hand. I posted it on my new Instagram account. Not the family Facebook page, not the group chat, just my space, mine alone. The caption read, "It took 22 years, but I finally took a photo. That didn't need to be approved." No one was tagged. No one commented, "So proud of our girl." And I didn't need them to. That picture wasn't for them. It was for the version of me who used to wait by the phone, hoping someone would notice. For the girl who used to scroll through family photos wondering what she did wrong, why she wasn't enough, why love felt like something she had to audition for. This time she didn't wonder. She didn't wait. She just smiled. Because I realized something important in that tiny DC apartment with the creaky floors and the 15 minutes of sunlight. Healing doesn't always come with fanfare. It doesn't arrive with an apology or a tearful reconciliation scene. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just you, sitting at your own table, holding flowers you bought for yourself, and realizing you don't need anyone else's permission to feel proud. I had spent so many years trying to earn a place at their table, trying to prove I was worth celebrating. But the truth was, I'd already built my own table, and it was sturdy, and it was mine. My father's letter stayed in my wallet. I read it sometimes on hard days when imposter syndrome crept in or when I missed the idea of a family that showed up. But I didn't need it to prove my worth anymore. I just needed it to remind me that once, someone saw me, and now I saw myself. Clearly, honestly, without conditions. The empty chairs at graduation used to haunt me. Now, they just felt like clarity. Because those seats were never really meant for them. They were meant for the people who actually showed up. Jesse, who brought me coffee. Tom, who brought me sunflowers. And me, who showed up for myself when no one else did. That's the thing about healing. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need witnesses. It just needs you to keep going, to keep building, to keep blooming, even when no one's watching. Especially then. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength in the quiet moments. Because your voice matters, even when no one claps.
The candles were already lit when my sister opened the door and said, "Sorry, you have the wrong house." No smile. No hesitation, just 6 words that slammed the door, harder than would ever could. I stood there holding a red velvet cake, 12 candles, 1 for every year they skipped, 6 I forgave, and 6 I never forgot. My name is Elena Moore, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever walked into a room that used to belong to you, only to realize they've replaced you with silence? I didn't knock again, didn't plead. Didn't shout, "It's me, your sister." I walked back to my car, placed the cake in the passenger seat like it still deserved celebration. And then it came. A text from my mom. "We told her fiancé you don't exist. We couldn't let him see you. He wouldn't understand." Wouldn't understand what, exactly? That I exist? That I don't match their filtered narrative? That I don't come with curated smiles and shiny lies? I replied with 2 words. Understood. And they had no idea what those words really meant. I went home, opened my financial dashboard, and began to reverse the blood flow. The $12,000 wedding fund I had quietly built? Frozen. The backup honeymoon account mom didn't know I could see? Disabled. The shared credit card my father used to handle last-minute details? Revoked. Then I printed out the family trust report, highlighted every payment. Every time I paid their overdue balances. Every time I bailed them out, I slid the report into a crisp envelope, along with a letter, written not in anger, but in clarity, addressed to Ethan Carter, my sister's fiancé. It started like this. Hi, Ethan. You've probably never heard of me. That wasn't an accident. I'm Elena, her only sister. I didn't need to rant. I just told the truth. Quietly, factually, with timelines, with proof. Then I boxed the envelope and mailed it, because if they wanted to delete me, they should have known. I leave paper trails. And now, their fairy tale was about to meet the part of the story they never wanted told. 3 days later, he got the letter. Ethan Carter, soon-to-be groom, soon-to-be in-law to a family that lied like they breathed. I know the moment he opened it, because the calls started within the hour. First, my sister. 10 missed calls. A text. You are disgusting. I hope you're happy. Then my mother. Voicemail. Voice trembling. You ruined everything. He was never supposed to see that. My father didn't even bother pretending. Just wrote, "You're out of the will." Perfect. I'd already funded it. Meanwhile, Ethan? He sent me exactly one message. Can we talk? I didn't reply. Not yet. Because this wasn't about vengeance. It was about recognition. About what it feels like to be completely erased, year after year, while still being used like a silent vault. They forgot my birthday every year for 6 straight years. No calls. No candles. Not even a fake Facebook HBD. But my bank account? They remembered that login. So I brought my own cake. And when they closed the door, they closed access to the last part of me that still believed they'd ever open it again. I wasn't done yet. That night, I logged into the final account. The shared trust mom had insisted stay in her name for convenience. The one she swore was only for family. Funny thing was, they forgot the trust was tied to my social, which meant I had full legal control, and the receipts to prove it. I pressed one button. Revoked access. Every single one of them. And then, I did the most satisfying thing I've ever done. I scheduled a recurring transfer to fund scholarships for girls who've aged out of foster care. Girls who knew what it meant to be invisible. Girls like me. Because if they were going to pretend I didn't exist, then fine. Let me be a ghost. A ghost with power, with paper trails, with purpose. And the next time they tell someone, we don't have a second daughter, they'll be telling the truth. Because the woman they once had, she lit her own candles, and then burned the bridge down to ash. By Friday night, the group chat blew up. My cousin Jenna texted, "Are you okay? I just saw Ethan leave the rehearsal dinner early alone." I didn't respond, because I knew. The letter worked. Ethan saw it all. The hidden credit lines I'd cleared in my sister's name, the down payment I secretly paid for her first car, the gifted family vacations that were actually billed to me. He saw the erased birthday messages. 6 years of nothing. But somehow, they had no problem adding my email when it was time to Venmo for the venue. He didn't just see neglect. He saw manipulation. A curated family narrative scrubbed of its only silent pillar. Me. And now, the cracks were visible. No more filters. No more lies. I heard from a friend who was at the dinner. Your sister looked pale. Ethan didn't speak to her once. He left right after the toasts. At midnight, my phone buzzed. A new message from Ethan. I didn't know. Everything suddenly makes sense. Thank you for the truth. Still, I didn't reply. Because this was never about him. This was about me. Reclaiming the years I spent being the duct tape. Holding their secrets and entitlement together. The next morning, I got a notification from the wedding planning platform. Refund issued. Vendor account closed. Guess who was the vendor? Me. I had offered, years ago in a weak moment, to cover the floral arrangements. They never confirmed. They just assumed. So I canceled the wire transfer. No roses. No orchids. No overpriced bouquets to match a fairy tale built on fiction. Later that evening, another knock on my door. A courier. A silver envelope. Inside, the wedding invitation, ripped in half. and scribbled in Ethan's handwriting. Turns out, you weren't the one with the wrong address. No name, no signature, just truth. I placed the torn invite next to the cake box I never threw away. Let it sit there, quiet, proud, whole. Because the girl they erased? She'd become the one person whose presence no one could ignore anymore. For years, I held my birthday in shadows. Not because I didn't care, but because pretending it didn't matter hurt less than waiting for a call that never came. No candles, no gifts, just quiet rooms and excuses that tasted like guilt. But this year, I threw a party. Not for them. For me. A rooftop in the city. Golden lights. Catered soul food. A DJ spinning Nina Simone into SZA. And guess who knew my full name and used it with love? People from my present. Friends I'd built. Women I'd mentored. A few clients turned sisters. Each one hugged me like I mattered. Like I wasn't someone to hide. Like I wasn't an embarrassment to keep from a fiancé. My daughter, Ava, handed me a card she made by hand. Pink and wild with glitter. Inside she wrote, "You're my favorite person in the world. I hope I grow up to be strong like you." I cried. Not the quiet, polite tears. The full-body ones. Because for the first time in my adult life, I felt seen on the day I was born. And guess what? No one from the family showed up. No call. No text. Not even a fake apology. But Ethan did. He didn't walk in with flowers or a dramatic speech. He walked in with respect. Waited until the music dipped low. Then approached and said, "I ended it. I couldn't marry into a lie. I want to thank you for telling the truth. Even when it cost you everything." I looked at him, took a breath, and nodded. No bitterness. No pride. Just closure. Because I didn't need to be part of their perfect picture. I'd created my own. Later that night, as candles flickered and Ava spun in her dress, someone asked if I wanted to make a wish. I smiled and said, "I already did." I wished for one birthday where I wasn't forgotten. Then I blew out the candles. 12 of them. Each one carrying away a year they tried to erase me. And, in their place, I lit a future I built myself. They thought I'd fade quietly. That after a rooftop party, I'd get it out of my system and return to the silent, reliable daughter they could ignore until needed. But silence? It had expired. I dug into my storage unit that week, pulled out old journals, receipts, even voicemails. Proof of every birthday missed, every graduation they skipped, every family photo I was cropped from. I compiled it all. Not for revenge. For record. I built a digital timeline. Each year I was forgotten got its own folder. 2017, a missed dinner, and a gas bill I paid for them. 2018, their trip to Cabo on my airline miles, booked the same week as my birthday. 2019, the year they said, "You're too sensitive. Grown women don't need cake." And in 2020, I had texted, "I don't even want gifts. Just a call." No response. But their Amazon delivery hit my inbox, paid with my Prime. This was not memory lane. It was evidence. Because someday Ava would ask, "Why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa? Why doesn't Aunt Marissa send cards? Why are they always at parties we're not invited to?" And I'll have answers. Not bitter. Not twisted. Just truth. They didn't forget my birthday. They chose not to show up. And now, I'm choosing not to show up for them. At the end of that week, I clicked send on one final email to the family accountant, requesting full removal of my name from every shared holding, investment, and asset. Subject line. Effective immediately. No explanation. No emotion. Just a clean exit. He replied, "Understood. Are you sure?" And I wrote back, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Because when someone spends 6 years showing you you're invisible, you stop begging to be seen. You start building mirrors, so they can finally see themselves. I looked in mine that night, face clean, eyes sharp. No more waiting for love that never came. They erased me from their narrative. So I rewrote the ending. And in this version, I never needed the invitation to matter. I became the story. The wedding still happened, just not the way they planned. No Ethan. No luxury hall. No $20,000 cake shaped like their fairy tale. The venue called me. I used to be listed as a financial guarantor. They were confused. The card on file declined. Would you like to keep the date? I laughed. Softly. No. Let the date go. Just like I did. They downgraded fast. From waterfront estate to some dusty lodge outside town. From hundreds of guests to a sparse 20. No press-on glamour could hide the cracks now. I didn't go, of course. But Jenna did. Cousin with a conscience. She sent me a single photo. My sister, in a wrinkled dress, looking out into a half-empty room. She wasn't smiling. Not even pretending. Because all the money she expected to float on? Gone. The emergency hair stylist failed. The custom florals? Never showed. The catering delivered to the wrong address. And her makeup artist posted a TikTok saying, "Be careful working with brides who burn bridges. Sometimes, karma shows up in bronzer." Meanwhile, I was at the lake with Ava. She was skipping rocks. I was sipping coffee. We were both free. She looked up and said, "Do you think they're thinking about us today?" I replied, "No. But that's okay. Today isn't about being missed. It's about not missing ourselves anymore. Because I had mourned that family. Like they were gone. Turns out, they were just never really there. Only present when they needed something. Only warm when it was convenient. The real loss wasn't me walking away. It was them losing the one person who never treated love like a transaction. By the end of that night, I lit a single candle in the window. Not for them. For the girl I used to be. The one who waited for birthday calls. For inclusion. For permission to be celebrated. I whispered to her, "We're not invisible anymore." And the flame danced like it believed me. 3 weeks after the wedding crumbled, they tried to reassemble the pieces. An email came through. Not from my sister. From my mother. Subject line. "Let's talk like family." It started sweet, as always. I know feelings got hurt, and ended with the same manipulation. "Your sister is struggling. If you could just help her get back on her feet." Not once did it say, "I'm sorry." Not once did it mention the door slammed in my face. The birthdays ignored. The fiancé lied to. No. It was all, "Let's move on. Let's forget. Let's return to normal." But I don't do normal anymore. Not when normal meant being used. Erased. Gaslit into guilt for asking to be loved out loud. So I didn't scream. I didn't rant. I wrote one word back. No. And I clicked send. That word traveled like thunder. Because I'd never said it before. Not when they needed money. Not when they borrowed my car. Not when they stayed silent about my existence. For the sake of their image. No was my liberation. And their collapse. A few days later, my sister posted on social. A photo of her alone with a caption. "Some people betray you in silence." I smiled. Because silence wasn't betrayal. Silence was survival. I had no interest in correcting her narrative anymore. She could sing her sorrow into every algorithm. But I wasn't the villain in her tragedy. I was the exit sign she ignored. That weekend, Ava and I hosted a dinner. 8 women. All forgotten daughters. Each one carrying stories like mine. Stories of being replaced by prettier lies. We passed plates. We passed healing. And one by one, we toasted the word no. Because sometimes, no is the kindest word you'll ever say. To people who only loved you when you were useful. And that night, in a room full of women who refused to shrink again, I realized something. I hadn't lost a family. I had built one. One no at a time. A year passed. No apology came. No call. No letter. Just silence. But this time, it felt like peace. On the morning of my next birthday, I woke up to sunshine pouring through linen curtains, the smell of pancakes drifting from a kitchen. Ava stood at the door, holding a plate with a single candle. "You didn't have cake last year," she said. "So, I made this one. It's lemon. Your favorite." I laughed. Real, open, healed laughter. And as she sang, off-key and radiant,
I realized.
this was the moment I had waited for. My entire life. Not the song, not the gift, but the recognition, the presence, the knowing that I didn't need to fight to be remembered anymore. That night, I invited friends over. The kind who stayed. The kind who saw me when no one else did. We danced barefoot in the living room. Ava drew stars on my arms with a glitter pen. We lit candles, told stories, ate 2 cakes this time, because we could. Not one text came from my parents, not one from my sister. But I didn't check. I didn't care. Because I knew. The girl who once stood on a porch with her own cake, hoping for a door to open,
Was gone.
in her place stood a woman who didn't need entry into any space that couldn't hold her truth. At midnight, I went outside, lit a match, and burned the last unopened letter they had sent. The flames curled around their lies, their shame, their smallness, until nothing was left but smoke and a future they couldn't touch. Ava came out, wrapped her arms around me, and whispered, "Happy birthday, Mom. You made a whole world without them." I smiled, not with pain, not with pride, but with something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. And as the stars blinked awake above us, I whispered to myself, just once, with full clarity, I am not forgotten. I'm finally home. My phone buzzed with one sentence that split something inside me clean. You weren't invited to Christmas dinner. Your brother's girlfriend doesn't like you. No hello. No apology. Just that. And this, after I had invested $120,000 into their collapsing business. No interest. No ownership papers. Just trust. My name is Danielle Harper. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever realized too late that your love was being rented, but your worth was never owned? I stared at that text for a full minute, thumb hovering, pulse hammering. Then I typed 2 letters. Okay. And with that, I became a ghost. Not one that haunts, but one that removes. I opened a folder labeled Family Expenses on my cloud drive. 157 receipts, all tied to them. Gas money, invoices, late fees I'd paid without being asked, their inventory bills, even the plumber they forgot to call until the pipes burst.
Click. Delete.
One by one, not out of pettiness, but clarity, because that text wasn't just a rejection. It was a revelation. I'd always been the problem solver, the wallet, the too intense sister, who asked for basic respect and got silence in return. But this time, I didn't argue. I didn't call. I didn't ask who made the decision. I just canceled every automatic payment, hooked into their business. Payroll? Frozen. Suppliers? Notified. Utilities? Due in 48 hours. They thought I would break. Instead, I disconnected life support. By midnight, my father had called 5 times. Mom left a voicemail in her carefully crafted worried tone. "Sweetheart, there's been a misunderstanding." And my brother? He texted, "You're seriously doing this over a dinner invite?"
No.
Not over a dinner. Over a lifetime of being told, "You're only welcome when you're useful." So I powered down my phone, made a mug of cocoa, and watched snowfall from a place where no one could disinvite me from my own peace. Because they canceled my seat at the table, and I canceled the table's foundation. By morning, I woke to chaos I didn't have to clean. 12 missed calls, 6 texts from my mother, 2 from my father, both in all caps. "Danielle, the electric bill didn't go through. Where's the supplier payment? They're threatening to walk. Your brother didn't know what she sent. It was her idea. We can fix this."
Fix.
That word again. Like I was a tool they could reach for whenever their neglect grew teeth. But I wasn't a wrench. I wasn't glue. And I sure as hell wasn't their financial oxygen anymore. I sipped my coffee slowly. The silence felt rich, like I had bought myself back. My name wasn't on their business, but my money had been.
And now?
My silence was the loudest partner they ever ignored. My mother called again. I let it ring. Then she tried guilt. "If the lights go off, We'll lose everything. I remember her voice just days ago, saying, just don't come. It'll make her uncomfortable. As if I was the inconvenience, not the woman who funded their failures, while they handed me crumbs of tolerance. So I emailed the accountant. Effective immediately, I withdraw all informal investments in Harper Family Mercantile. Please notify all vendors of my exit and redirect outstanding balances to Raymond and Patricia Harper. Danielle Harper. A clean, sharp exit. Not angry, not loud, just final. And while they scrambled, I cleaned out the one thing I'd never dared touch before. My emotional debt. I unfollowed them on socials, deleted the group chat, blocked every number but Ava's, my niece, the only soul in that house who'd ever said, "You matter." That afternoon, a letter arrived, handwritten, from my father. Don't let one dinner destroy a lifetime of support. I almost laughed. A lifetime of support? From me to them. They fed off my loyalty and starved me of belonging. So I tore the letter in half, dropped it in the shredder, because their business wasn't the only thing collapsing. The illusion that I owed them forever, that crumbled too. They stopped calling by day 3. Silence fell, but it wasn't peace for them. It was panic. Their store hours changed suddenly. Closed for renovations, the sign read. Funny. There was no money for renovations. Not without me. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just watched, quietly, calmly, as the very structure I'd kept alive on my back began to rot without warning. Then the email came from their landlord. Hi Danielle. I understand you've handled rent previously. The January payment is 2 weeks past due. Can you confirm your continued involvement? I responded in one line. Not involved. Please contact the legal owners directly. He replied. Copy that. Forwarding eviction notice today. That was the moment it became real for them. Not when I said, okay. Not when I deleted the receipts. But when the lights dimmed, and there was no one left to flip the switch back on. My brother texted me later that night. You really let a girl you don't even know come between us? I stared at the screen. This wasn't about her. It never was. It was about every single time they chose someone else's comfort over my existence. They didn't forget to include me. They excluded me on purpose. Because I didn't fit the image they wanted to project. I was the one who worked too hard, spoke too directly, earned too much, took up too much space. I made them uncomfortable, not because I failed, but because I stopped needing their permission to succeed. So I blocked the number. And that night, I wrote a letter.
Not to them.
To myself. Dear Danielle, you gave more than they ever thanked you for. And when they dismissed you, you chose dignity over desperation. You don't owe anyone a second chance. When they never cared enough to show up for your first. I sealed it in an envelope. Put it in a box labeled. Read when you start to doubt yourself. Because the only investment I was making now was in my own healing. Let the business fall. Let the lights stay off. Let the silence grow. They didn't want me at the table. So I built one where only love gets a seat. The knock came on a Thursday.
Soft.
Then loud. Then desperate. I didn't answer right away. I just stood in the hallway, watching them through the peephole. My parents. No flowers. No apology cake. Just 2 people who used to owe me by guilt. Now standing in the cold with nothing left to leverage. I opened the door halfway.
Didn't invite them in.
My mother looked smaller than I remembered.
Worn.
Worried. Still holding on to the same face she used when she wanted me to feel like the ungrateful one. Sweetheart, we just need a little help. Your father's been trying to save the business. And I know we said things we didn't mean. I nodded slowly. Let her finish. My father stayed quiet, not out of shame, but because he was doing the math in his head. How much would it take to get me back? What strings could they pull this time? But they forgot. I'd cut them all.
I stepped outside, closed the door behind me.
No warmth. No pretense. You didn't forget Christmas, I said. You erased me. You chose someone's opinion of me over your own blood. And now you're only here because your accounts went dry. My mother's eyes glossed. But I didn't mistake that for regret. It was fear. Fear of losing the resource, not the daughter. Please, she whispered. We can't do this without you. I held her gaze. You should have thought of that before you let someone who just met me convince you I didn't belong in your home. They stood there, silent, finally facing the weight of what they'd thrown away. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a bad daughter. I felt like a free woman. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned, opened my door, and said the calmest words I've ever spoken. This home is built on love and respect. You won't find what you're looking for here. And I closed the door, not to punish, but to protect what I've finally begun to build. A life where my worth isn't borrowed, bartered, or silenced. They didn't show up again after that. No more knocks. No more texts. Just silence. But this time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt clear. Because when I closed that door, I wasn't just shutting them out. I was stepping into a life that didn't shrink to fit their comfort. I stopped explaining myself. Stopped softening my voice. Stopped justifying why I was always the one left out. Then expected to fix everything anyway. I used to say, maybe they don't know how much it hurt. Now I say, they did. And they did it anyway. I used to wonder if they'd ever change. Now I know. I changed. And that was enough. I took a walk that Sunday through the old neighborhood, past the store I'd once saved. The windows were boarded now. A for lease sign hanging crooked, like the weight of all their bad decisions finally caught up to the glass. People used to stop me in that neighborhood and say, "You're such a good daughter." And I was. But being a good daughter doesn't mean being a doormat with a debit card. So I stopped. Took one last photo of the place. Not for memory. For proof. Proof that walking away wasn't cruelty. It was survival. I printed that photo later that night, pinned it to my vision board. Next to it, a note. Never shrink for people who only grow when they stand on your back. Ava saw it. She asked what the photo was. I told her. That's the last thing I ever paid for that didn't love me back. She nodded, quietly taking it in, like even at 10 years old, she understood. And right there in our little kitchen, we made a new tradition. Every time we let something go that hurt us, we light a small candle. So we lit one, watched it flicker, watched it fade. And as the smoke rose, so did a quiet promise inside me. I will never again apologize for leaving rooms that let me burn, while others stayed warm. They always thought I'd come back, that I'd feel guilty, that I'd miss the noise, the obligation, the illusion of family. But I didn't miss the tension, the unspoken rules, the way love always came with invoices and side comments. They thought I'd cave by spring. I didn't. I blossomed. Because sometimes, peace isn't something you find, it's what finally grows. When you stop watering the people who drain you. One morning, a bank alert hit my email. The joint account I once co-signed for them. Frozen by court order. They were being sued. Unpaid vendors. Back taxes. A business built on IOUs. And one daughter who had finally said no. I sat on my balcony, watching the sun warm the city below me. No panic. No flinch. Just stillness. Ava walked out, wrapped in her blanket, holding her sketchpad. They're in trouble, aren't they? She asked, eyes too wise for her age. They are, I said. But not because of me. She paused. Do you feel bad? I looked her in the eyes. No, baby. I feel free. Because for once, their collapse wasn't my responsibility. I didn't answer the calls. Didn't reply to the "we didn't mean it" emails. Didn't entertain the sudden "we miss you" messages. That came with court dates and overdue bills. You see, when they cut me from Christmas, to impress a woman who'd known them 6 months, they also cut the bridge. To the only person keeping them afloat. They chose to be loyal to appearances. To convenience. To people who liked the version of me that didn't exist. So, I vanished. And, in my silence, the truth echoed louder than any apology they never gave. No more investments. No more saving face. No more rescuing people who would sell your dignity for a compliment. I'd done my time in their story. Now I was finally living mine, one that didn't begin and end with family obligations, but with something far deeper.
Self-respect.
And the more I chose it, the quieter the noise became, until the only thing left was my own voice, whispering, "You were never hard to love. They just never learned how." Spring turned into summer, and with it came a letter. Thick envelope. Handwritten. No return address. But I knew the handwriting like a scar. It was from my mother. Inside, a plea. Long, rambling. Manipulative. Dressed in just enough sorrow to sound sincere. "We've made mistakes. Your father is sick with stress. Your brother regrets everything. Your niece asks about you all the time. They never once said, 'We hurt you,' only that they were now hurting. And could I come fix it?" Again. The kicker? A postscript in my father's blunt tone. "You're still part of this family, whether you like it or not." I read it once. Then again. Then I stood up, walked outside, and set the letter on fire. Watched it curl into ash. On the same balcony where I used to take panicked calls, trying to keep their business from sinking. I whispered, "I'm not your safety net anymore." And it felt holy. That week, I had them removed from every lingering tie. Small Blue Diamond closed the joint savings account. Small Blue Diamond updated the power of attorney. Small Blue Diamond changed the emergency contact on Ava's school forms. Small Blue Diamond cleared every digital fingerprint they had left on my finances. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. Because people who say, "You'll always be family," only seem to remember that when they're desperate for what you can still give them. I blocked every number. Set my inbox to auto-delete any message from their domains. My voicemail now says, "If you're calling to reconnect, know that I've already made peace." And that peace doesn't include reopening old wounds. Ava asked why we were cutting them off again. I told her the truth. Because boundaries don't mean we hate them. They mean we finally love ourselves enough to say, "This far and no further." We baked a cake that night. Chocolate. With extra sprinkles. Not for a birthday. Just because we could. And as we danced in our little kitchen, I realized they used to be the storm. Now they're just weather I don't live in anymore. 1 year. That's how long it took for the grief to turn into something softer. Not forgetfulness. Not forgiveness. Just distance. Not the kind measured in miles, but in growth. I sat across from the clerk at the courthouse, papers in hand. Her eyebrows lifted. "Changing your last name, Miss Harper?" I shook my head.
No.
Changing my story. Because Harper wasn't just a name. It was the chain on every debt I was never owed. The signature that signed away my silence. The brand I carried. On every check, every favor, every forgotten birthday. But not anymore. I signed the new one. Danielle Reeve. Simple. Sharp. Mine. Reeve, like to stitch together. Because that's what I had done. Taken scraps of hurt and sewn a new life. One that fit without apology. I walked out of that building. With no family behind me, but more freedom than I'd ever known. No more saving people who only remembered me when they were drowning. No more dinners I wasn't welcome at. No more conditional love. My daughter Ava greeted me at home with a bouquet of paper flowers she made. "Happy New Name Day," she said. "You don't belong to them anymore." I pulled her into my arms. "Baby, I never did." We baked cookies, watched old cartoons, lit a candle, not for mourning, but for becoming. Later that night, I opened a blank journal, wrote one sentence on the first page. "This is where the real story starts." And I meant it. Not because they stopped calling. Not because I changed my name, but because I no longer needed to be loved by people who couldn't even see me. I am the woman they couldn't break. The silence they couldn't shame. The daughter who didn't burn the bridge. Just walked across it and never looked back. No revenge. No courtroom drama. No public meltdown. just a woman, who said, okay, and then quietly reclaimed her entire life.